So what could my first term be like?
3x4.
3 what?
x4.
3x to the fourth plus 7x cubed. Can I just say plus 5? Can I skip terms? I can skip terms, right? You would know enough to fill them in with zeros if you needed to do something with them. Okay, so I want you to compare the 3 to the 4. This top 3, that 4 right there. The degree of the numerator is a 3. The degree of the denominator is a 4. I happen to call this bottom heavy. And if a rational function is bottom heavy, then the horizontal asymptote is always the same. It's always y equals 0. And y equals 0 is known as the what? It's the x axis. The x-axis is y equals 0. So that means that the function on its far ends, we'll talk about this a little bit more, but horizontal asymptotes describe far end behavior, what's happening way at negative infinity and way at positive infinity for my axis. And it means that the function will not be crossing that x-axis way on the far ends. Now maybe that's not the case. Maybe n is greater than m. So, in which case, I can come up with an example kind of quick like f of x equals, I'm kind of squished here. I'm going to squeeze it down because I have one more example underneath. Okay. N is greater than m. So how about 2x to the 6 plus 5x cubed minus 4x plus 1. Like I said, I'm just making that up. However, I'm going to be very particular about this bottom now. What do you think I want to happen with the bottom? I want an exponent what?
It's less than.
That's less than 6. So I'm going to pick an exponent of
5.
Yeah, I'll pick a 5. Okay. How about 1x? How about 4? X to the 5th minus 6x squared plus 5. The degree of my numerator is a 6. The degree of my denominator is a 5. So therefore, the degree of my numerator is greater than the degree of my denominator. When this happens, this function is called top heavy. And the horizontal asymptote is none. A rational function that is top heavy will not have a horizontal asymptote. Again, we'll discuss this more in detail. Just getting the rules out to you right now. And unless you've seen it before, you'd never guess this last piece. Of course, you know what the bullet is, right? What's the bullet?
N equals m.
N is equal to m, which means the degree of the numerator has to equal the degree of the denominator. So, f of x equals, and I'm tight here, right? Okay. How about 3x to the 4th plus 8x cubed minus 9. And on my denominator, can you see okay? On my denominator, what? What do you want?
2x to the 4th.
2x to the 4th? Very good. You can make it up, you know what I'm doing. 2x to the 4th
Minus 6x.
minus 16. You would say get done with that thing. Okay, good job. So you see the degree of the numerator is a
4.
and the degree of the denominator is a
4.
So the degree of the numerator is equal to the degree of the denominator. So here's the rule for this, and there is a rule for it, and you do have a horizontal asymptote. You ready? My horizontal asymptote is y equals, and it's a big fraction. It's actually a little fraction, but it takes a lot of room to write it the first time through. And the first thing is the leading coefficient of the numerator divided by the, yes, the leading coefficient of the denominator. Which would have been really nice if I could just write n of x and d of x, but I don't know if you realized I write out the word numerator and denominator all the time, just so that you don't get confused on what's what. So, what are the leading coefficients?
4.
They're back here.
Oh.
Yeah, the leading coefficients are the 3 and the 2, you guys. So it's y equals
3
over 2.
3 over 2. Good job. Yeah, I never like the days where you have to just take a bunch of notes and get it down. I like making sure to explain a whole bunch of stuff through examples. So let's see if you guys can answer a few things for me. Ready? How do you find an x-intercept?
Y
That y equals 0. How do you know my next question? How do you find a y-intercept? How do you find a y-intercept? Let x equal 0 and solve for y. How do you find your vertical asymptotes?
The denominator is equal to 0. Solve for x and check to make sure the x values do not make the numerator equal to 0 too.
Good, reader.
With an
Good,
exclamation point.
Yeah?
With an exclamation point at the end.
With an exclamation point and a TOO. Alright? How do you find the horizontal asymptotes in general? The general idea of horizontal asymptotes?
Degree of the numerator over the degree of the denominator.
Only if, when you're comparing the degree of the numerator to the degree of the denominator? Is that what you mean? Okay, so when you say over, I'm looking at the leading coefficient, over the leading coefficient. That gives you, but it's only in this case. But I do want you to compare the degrees of both the numerator and denominator. What happens if a function is bottom heavy? Y equals 0. What happens if a function is top heavy? No horizontal asymptotes. And what happens if the degree of the numerator is equal to that of the degree of the denominator?
Leading coefficient.
Okay. So you take the ratio of the leading coefficients. Can we say it like that? Take the ratio of the leading coefficients? Okay. When you give me an x-intercept, what are you giving me for an answer?
0
Number,
number.
comma, 0.
0.
So what is it called though? It is a point. If you give me a y-intercept, what are you giving me? You're giving me a point. If you give me a vertical asymptote, what are you giving me?
Vertical line.
A line, a vertical line. All vertical asymptotes start with what letter? X. All horizontal asymptotes start with what letter? Y. When you're giving me a horizontal asymptote, what are you giving me?
Horizontal.
You give me a horizontal line. What's the slope of any horizontal line?
0.
0. Good job. Okay, a little bit extra. Okay, so I'll tell you what. I got like 5 minutes before the ding-a-ling-a-ling goes ding-a-ling-a-ling. So I'm going to hand something out to you. Before I hand it out to you, I'm going to copy question number 4 to the front. And I'm going to show you what I expect you to do. Question 4 is the hardest one on this worksheet. And it's because Gina in her ultimate wisdom copied something wrong. So that's okay, but we're just going to do it the way it is. It's 2x squared minus 5x minus 12 and 3x squared plus 7x minus 2. This is question 4, and I'm going to go ahead and pass these to you so you can see what's coming at you. Yeah, well, hold on though. Now, if you accidentally put your horizontal asymptote and your vertical asymptote in the wrong column, do not draw me an arrow telling me to look elsewhere. You take an eraser and you erase and you get your work right. Okay? So you make sure everything's lined up. First thing that this question is asking for is X-intercepts. How do I find X-intercepts? I'm going to kind of go fast, you guys. Anybody an X-intercept?
Set y equals 0.
Let y equal 0. And if you're going to let y equal 0, how is this fraction going to equal 0? The numerator gets set equal to 0 also. So 2x squared minus 5x minus 12 is equal to 0. This happens to factor really nice. I'm not going to spend the time factoring this with you. I'm simply going to do it.
Where are you supposed to write this? Is this on?
In your own work. Only the answers go in the chart, okay? Okay, so I have these values here for my factors, and then that will leave me with x equals
4.
negative 3/2 and x equals
4.
positive 4. What am I finding? X-intercepts. How do I leave my answers?
In points.
As a point, right? So one of them is negative 3/2, comma 0, and the other one is 4, comma 0. Notice you found the x values that match the y value of 0. So you bring it back in. And these are my x-intercepts. Next thing we're asking for are, is, I suppose, y-intercept. How do I find a y-intercept?
Set x equals
Let x equal 0. So I basically want to find f of 0. It's going to give me 2 times 0 squared minus 5 times 0 minus 12. Makes me wonder why I'm doing this, right? 3 times 0 squared plus 7 times 0 minus 2. This gives me what?
negative 12 over negative 2.
Negative 12 over negative 2.
Equals 6.
And
Good
therefore my
afternoon. We
answer,
have just 2 brief announcements. All wrestlers, please report directly to room
06?
225.
okay. What else do I
Following
need
the
now?
bell. If you ride bus 90, get onto bus 155.
My vertical
and then
asymptote. How do I find my vertical
one.
asymptote?
Again, if you ride bus 90, get on
Set that
bus
denominator equal to
155
0.
and it will be parked in slot 1. Have a
Which
great
means
afternoon.
3x squared plus 7x minus 2 is equal to 0. And this is what makes the question hard to do. If I had put a plus 2 there, you'd be able to solve this with a factoring. However, I didn't. So therefore, you have to use what? Quadratic formula. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This gives me x equals negative 7 plus or minus 49 minus 4 times negative 6 all over 2 times 3. This is x equals, yeah, it is all over 6, right?
Yeah.
Negative 7 plus or minus the square root of 70.
That's 25. No, that's 73.
73. I'm going to leave it right like that, okay? And box it. And these are my what? Vertical asymptotes. And the last thing I need is my horizontal asymptote. So you see your function, 2x squared minus 5x minus 12 over 3x squared plus 7x, that's really bad, minus 2. How do I find my horizontal asymptote?
Really close to the numerator,
Only because those are equal, right? My 2's match? Y equals 2/3, and this is my horizontal asymptote. Ready? 1, 2, 3.